Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Chief Guest, respected Chair of the session, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. On behalf of Bangladesh Institute of International and Strategic Studies, BIISS, may I take this opportunity to welcome you all in today's webinar on Bangabandhu's vision of Sonar Bangla, Bangladesh at 50. We are honored to have amongst us His Excellency, Professor Dr. Gohar Rifsby, Advisor to the Honorable Prime Minister on International Relation Affairs, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, as the Chief Guest. Dear audience, today, 4 eminent personalities will present their papers. This will be followed by an open discussion. The webinar will be chaired by Major General Mohammad Imdadul Bari, NDC PSC TE Director General Base. May I now request the chair of the session to kindly commence the program. Thank you.
Video join করেছি তো আচ্ছা ফ্যানটা একটু হালকা করে দিয়ে যান
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Chief Guest, Professor Dr. Gohar Rifsby, Advisor to the Honorable Prime Minister on International Relation Affairs, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, who will be shortly joining us, distinguished participants, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and our learned panelists. Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. On behalf of all members of Bangladesh Institute of International and Strategic Studies, let me welcome you all to the 4th webinar of the series of seminars on Bangabandhu, organized by BIS in the Mujib Centenary. Earlier, we had discourse on Bangabandhu's unfinished memoir, leadership, and foreign policy. Today, we shall discuss about Bangabandhu's vision of Sonar Bangla, while Bangladesh is at 50. At the very outset, in this historic month of March, I would like to pay the deepest tribute to the memory of the father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and all martyrs who laid their lives for the nation. Learned audience, you know how leadership has oftentimes altered the course of history and led a nation towards emancipation or destruction. Bangabandhu, being truly a son of the soil who deeply understood his motherland, identified the needs and struggles of his people and shaped those into dreams, inspired people to rise up to the dreams in cohesion and break free the shackles of oppression, and thus delivered a new nation to the world. Visionary leadership has placed Bangabandhu among the greatest leaders in history, while his speech of the 7th March 1971 that enkindled self-determination in his people is now a part of the world heritage. While Bangabandhu Sonar Bangla is now celebrating its golden jubilee, we shall see in retrospection how the father of the nation envisioned it when he set the initial course of the nation state. Dear participants, the post-liberation period was laden with chaos. There were complications to be solved and courses of action to be determined immediately. While people placed all their hopes on him, Bangabandhu found his path challenged with conspiracies and sabotage attempts. Pakistani forces destroyed rail lines, bridges, roads, telecommunication system, industries, infrastructures, and productions and supply chain, devastating the entire economy. Pakistani army burned the entire cash and gold reserve in the central bank just before their surrender. The major challenges in the economic front were the need for mobilizing adequate internal and external resources, building infrastructures, rehabilitating thousands of people who lost everything in the war, and reviving the financial, industrial, and business organizations. Ensuring security, good governance, and establishing effective diplomatic relations with countries across the world were among the other challenges in the non-economic sector. Bangabandhu rendered not only a charismatic leadership for creating an independent nation, but aptly devoted himself to nation building and state building efforts just after the birth of Bangladesh. The foundations that he laid for the nation state during his brief period of statesmanship had far-reaching impact for us and are still largely relevant to the contemporary world. Ladies and gentlemen, in the independent Bangladesh, Bangabandhu relocated his efforts towards making his dream of Sonar Bangla, that is, the Switzerland of East, a reality. Immediately after independence, Bangabandhu instilled a national creed of rebuilding the war-torn country through establishing fundamental institutions and preparing recovery measures. But what he instituted were not mere damage control measures, but a prudent prescription for socio-economic emancipation. Empowerment of people was the prime focus of his development approach. Bangabandhu became an architect of policy infrastructure to lift the nation from the wreckage of the war and put it on the track to prosperity. His policy initiatives, such as the Third Industrial Revolution and nationalization policy, state investment in agriculture, rural infrastructure, and cottage industries, formulating the first 5-year plan of Bangladesh, etc., paved the way for the development of this country. To uplift the dignity of this nation in the international arena, Bangabandhu also adopted a futuristic foreign policy. Bangabandhu often called the people of this country as Amar Dukhi Manush, and he devoted himself on poverty alleviation and social progress. In the General Assembly address in 1974, Bangabandhu said, and I quote, "Let us together create a world that can eradicate poverty, hunger, war, and human sufferings, and achieve global peace and security for the well-being of humanity," unquote. Bangabandhu started microcredit program immediately after the independence to make the poor people self-reliant. Aligning with that spirit, the current government under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is relentlessly working for zero hunger and zero poverty. Distinguished participants, Bangabandhu's visionary leadership and assertive approach, which is aptly followed by his valiant daughter, Sheikh Hasina, the Honorable Prime Minister of Bangladesh, is a key model for the development approach of the country. Under the dynamic leadership, Bangladesh has effectively surpassed all the thresholds set by the Committee for Development Policy of the United Nations to be a middle-income country. We expect that our eminent discussants today will throw light on those aspects of Bangabandhu's approach that endured the test of time and still glow as a beacon to Sonar Bangla. Finally, I express my gratitude once again to the honorable guests and learned audience for encouraging us with your kind participation. I hope that we will have an intriguing discussion followed by an engaging interactive session. But before we begin the session proper, I would like to request our dear audience to please check your username by which we identify you and endorse your participation. Please raise your hand if you intend to speak during this interactive session and wait for being nominated. You may also send questions in the message box, and please keep your microphone switched off until you speak. So dear participants, as you already know, we have a very distinguished scholars in the panel today. Dr. Qazi Khalikuzzzaman Ahmed, Chairman, Palli Karma Sahayak Foundation. Professor Dr. Mustafiz Rahman, Distinguished Fellow, Center for Policy Dialogue. Dr. Binayak Sen, Research Director, Bangladesh Institute of Development Studies. And Dr. Mahfuz Kabir, Research Director of BIS. Let us all warmly welcome them on board. So dear participants, without further ado, let us begin with Professor Dr. Mustafiz Rahman. Professor Mustafiz, you have the floor. Thank you. I think your microphone is off, sir.
Can you hear me? Hello. Is it okay? Can you hear me? Chair, can you hear me? Sure. Hello. 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 Can you please hear me? Huh?
Message দিয়েছে, go ahead, can hear you.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me this opportunity to join this very important session. And I would like to register my deep appreciation to BIS for organizing this very important event on the occasion of Bangabandhu's centenary and the jubilee of our independence. I would like to begin by remembering the sacrifice of our father of the nation and also the martyrs. I'm very happy that for this discussion you have chosen a theme which is often not appreciated enough, I think. One of the major features of Bangabandhu's first 5-year plan was to make Bangladesh self-sufficient and also to reduce our dependence. As we know, at the beginning, many people thought that Bangladesh will be perennial basket case, which would mean that we would be going everywhere with our begging bowl. One of the very first books on Bangladesh in the 70s was called Bangladesh, the test case for development. The authors in their preface, they said that we are calling it not a test case for development, but the test case for development, because if development is possible in this country, it will be possible in any country, because we foresee that this country will be perennially dependent on aid. So from that perspective, the theme that I have been asked to talk about, Bangladesh's transformation from a predominantly aid-receiving country to a trading nation, I think is very important. And we are very happy that Dr. Gohar Rizvi is with us as well. So it's an opportunity to share some of my ideas with regard to the theme that you have asked me to reflect on. We know that during the Pakistan era, the Paris Consortium was the major annual event where the aid was the aid pledge was determined and how much would be given to Pakistan, and that was determined by the various donor countries. When Bangladesh was established, Bangabandhu and his first Prime Minister Tajuddin Ahmed, they thought that the meeting should take place in Dhaka. They thought that gradually through the implementation of the 5-year plan, we will be able to reduce our dependence on aid, and also there would be diversification of our export, less dependence on import through import substituting industrialization. So that was the strategy of the first 5-year plan. And gradually, when we look back from the vantage point of March 2021, when we are celebrating 50 years of our independence, looking back, we see how the transformation was made from aid to trade. Even in the 1990s, we find that our export and our aid, the ratio was almost 1:1. If we take the pre-pandemic year, when our export was $40 billion, our services remittance was another $17 billion. So we had $57 billion of export of goods and services, against which only $5 billion of aid. So we can see that the ratio was 11:1 instead of 1:1. If we look at our purchasing power from our exports, and how, to what extent we can underwrite the import that we have annually, we see that pre-pandemic year 2019-20, we were importing $56 billion, and against that, our exports of goods and services, as I was mentioning, was $57 billion, meaning that we could underwrite all our imports. If we now look at what is our aid burden, $60 billion, which is less than 20% of our $320 billion of GDP. What is our debt servicing? It's less than $2 billion, which is 1/20th of our export of goods. So I would like to submit that really over the last 5 decades, following the vision of Bangabandhu in his first 5-year plan, we have been able to translate our economy from aid dependency to trade. Secondly, I think what is also in the as an issue of learning is that we will also have to understand that what has been the role of the government in this transition. I think policies matter. That we have now, transformed ourselves into a trading nation is also because the government took bold steps through various policy changes. The introduction of bonded warehouse facilities, back-to-back LCs. I think these were steps which the government took and which stimulated the emergence of our export-oriented ready-made garments. So policies matter, incentives matter. Over the years, a number of incentives, export incentives, subsidies have been given to our export-oriented sectors, and that those have also stimulated our exports. Global market access scenario matters. We have been enormously benefited by the zero tariff market access that we have enjoyed, and many of the least developed countries were not able to take advantage of that. But Bangladesh was one of the very few countries that was able to take advantage of the market access facilities that were on offer. I think entrepreneurship also mattered. That Bangladesh could transform from primary production-based export to manufactured-based export, be it apparels, pharmaceuticals, leather and leather goods, etc. I think that entrepreneurship also mattered. And I would say that the working people mattered in this transformation, that our workers supported the entrepreneurs, and together we could translate our comparative advantages into competitive advantage in the global market, and that's how the export sector has emerged. And through this transformation from aid to trade, we have been able to create jobs for millions of people, millions of women, social empowerment. A new generation of entrepreneurs have come forward, and we have not only been able to put our footprints in the goods market, but also in the services market. So I think that these transformations have contributed enormously to the dual graduation that we are seeing at present. The transformation from a low-income country to lower middle-income country, so middle-income transformation, and also graduation from the LDCs by 2026. So I think that this transformation from aid to trade has also helped us to undertake this journey of dual graduation. Now, last point, which is important, I think, is what are the challenges in going forward? Will future be just a linear extension of the past? No. LDC graduation, for example, will mean a lot of changes for our export-oriented sectors when there will be no market access in most of the countries from which we have taken advantage of and reap benefits. So what we will need is to translate our economy from market access driven competitiveness to productivity and skills driven competitiveness. I think that transformation will be required if we want to continue our achievements of the past. So skills, productivity, labor productivity, capital productivity, all these will become important when there is no zero tariff market access. So this is something, and for that we will need to realign our education system. We will need to have more focus on research and development, and we will need to go for various negotiations. And we have proposed that there should be a negotiating cell in the Ministry of Commerce, like the one that they have for the WTO, the WTO cell. So negotiating comprehensive partnership agreement, free trade agreement. So all these will require reciprocity as against non-reciprocity, which we are accustomed as of now. So give and take, the trade-offs, all these will be very important. And as we know, in these type of discussions, countries get not what they deserve, but what they negotiate. So negotiating skills and our own reforms to open up the economy will also be very, very important. Some of the sectors which have propelled Bangladesh's this transition from aid to trade, like pharmaceuticals, these sectors have benefited from our status as LDCs. No patenting, no licensing required, etc. So, but once we graduate, obviously patent license laws will have to be tuned as a developing country, and we will need to also realign our capacities. So, for example, the backward linkage, active pharmaceutical industry will be very important if we want to go forward. In the other sectors, skills and productivity enhancing various support measures which have to be WTO compatible. Till now, there are many flexibilities in the WTO that we enjoy, but going forward, many of these flexibilities will not be allowed under the WTO. Otherwise, we will be taken to the dispute settlement body of the WTO. So all these are the new challenges which are emerging. But on the other hand, our transition that we have made gives us also the strength on which to build. So I would say that the foundations have been made. The country has gained enormously from that, and it gives us hope. It gives us strength to translate our potentials into realities. And so I think that going forward from here, we as a country and as a nation, we are confident that we will be able to achieve the Vision 2041, which the government has designed, and I was fortunate enough to be associated with that document. So I think that we want just not an export or to be an export oriented country, but we want the development to be also inclusive. So we want better jobs, we want better paying wages for our workers, which would allow them to have living wages. So all these will bring the next round of challenges, next generation of challenges. But I would like to end by saying that we have proved the naysayers wrong. We have proved those who said that it will be the test case for development. And going forward, we have confidence that we will be able to go towards 2041 as a developed country, which is inclusive and which is environmentally friendly. So with those few words, and once again registering my deep appreciation for this very kind invitation to share some of my views, I end here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mostafiz. As I was alluding to, the formative years of the country. Bangabandhu's economic plan, although there were priorities about reliability, but then in all the budgets, he had prioritized agriculture, education, and not only policy reforms, he also quickly established important institutes, Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, the Shilpurin সংস্থা, Bangladesh Agriculture Research Council, and etc., which actually paved the way for what Dr. Mustafiz has said, that we were actually, along the path, we were actually able to transform our competitive advantage. But he also awares us about that future may not necessarily be an extension of the past. Thank you, Dr. Mustafiz. Ladies and gentlemen, I can see our honorable chief guest, Professor Dr. Gauhar Rizvi, advisor to the Honorable Prime Minister on International Relations and Affairs, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, has already joined. That's all. Warmly welcome. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker, Dr. Binayak Shah from BIDS. Dr. Binayak, you have the floor.
Sorry, is it my turn?
Dr. Binayak, yes, you have the floor, please.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I've been told to talk about poverty and social progress in Bangladesh. This is, of course, a very large topic to be covered in a session. So I would just highlight 3 points. First on the trends, second on the drivers, and third on the challenges. So on the trends, it's very clear, as Nicholas Kristof wrote in New York Times on March 10, 2021, that what can Biden's plan do for poverty? Look to Bangladesh. So that captures all. And in that article, very influential journalist Nicholas Kristof, who wrote earlier about the environment, that Bangladesh provides an inspiring story of reducing poverty, with 25 million Bangladeshis lifted from poverty over 15 years. So what was the beginning on the poverty front? In 1973-74 HIS, Bangladesh's poverty, overall national poverty, was assessed at around 80%. It is reduced to around 60% in 91-92. and now it has reduced to 24% in 2016 and 20% in 2020, just prior to the COVID. We did a background paper for the 8-5-year plan to assess the possible COVID impact on poverty. Even with the shock of poverty, shock of COVID, we find that the overall poverty rate in 2020, in last quarter, on average, will not exceed 25%. So there is a lost 5 years, no doubt, because of COVID shock. So between 2016 and 2020, not much improvement. But nevertheless, we have managed to stabilize poverty at the level that was prevailing in 2016. So from 80% coming down to 25% is the story of Bangladesh's ascent from poverty. At the same time, we find that it not only touched the overall poor, but also the extreme poor. The incidence of extreme poverty during the same period has declined from around 70% to only 12.8% in 2016. And if we look at the recent period between 91, 92 and 2016, it will be from 41% declining to 22%. So this is on the consumption dimensions of poverty or income dimensions of poverty. But there have been improvement on other indicators of well-being as well. There are many indicators. Christoph mentions that the two variables played a critical role. One being the spread of education, particularly female education, and the increasing labor force participation on the part of women. So if we look at that last indicator, the female participation in the labor market, we find that our female labor force participation rate is assessed at 37%, as opposed to India's overall 29%. So even compared to all India average, we have progressed and surpassed the yardstick of female labor force participation rate. Although we have room to grow on that front, we need to increase the female labor force participation rate from current 37% to around 55, 60% in the next 20 years. But that remains under the challenge front. But whatever has been achieved on female labor force participation front, I give you a time trend in that indicator. In 1983-84, only 15% of women participated in labor force. Now it is 37%. So there has been a tremendous increase. So Christoph's argument is that the spread of female education, which was very negligible in the early 80s, it has increased so much that now girls are more than the boys in the high school stream. And this reversal of gender disparity in primary and secondary education is a remarkable achievement, and perhaps socially much more remarkable achievement than even poverty reduction record. And this played a tremendous role in reducing fertility rate. Total fertility rate in 1975 was around 7, comparable and not much difference from the level attained in Pakistan. So it's around 7. By early 90s, the Pakistan's level of TFR came down to around 4.5, but Bangladesh's fertility level was already hovering around 3. And now it is almost reaching the replacement level of fertility rate of 2.1 in Bangladesh. So when a society make a transition from high fertility and associated high mortality regime to a low fertility, low mortality regime, then a society unleashes a number of social forces. One, the quality of children increases. The nutritional standard of children increases, maternal nutritional level increases, a value of female education increases, and all these forces synergize into a social transformational aspect. So for me, this causal factor started in the domain of fertility reduction that led to the higher appreciation of female labor force, female education, and that led in turn to the greater transformation in the society. And also it led to improvement in nutritional and other indicators. In fact, in the stunting rate, the Bangladesh's level of stunting rate is even lower than in India average level. In the book An Uncertain Glory, Amartya Sen and Jean Drej devoted an entire section to comparing Bangladesh and India's performance and showed that Bangladesh shows the way. Long before Nicholas Christophe, just in this month, wrote that Biden should learn from Bangladesh. These transformational facts are well known by now. But what have been the drivers behind it? So I mentioned about the female labor force participation and female education is one factor. But the economic drivers, we find that behind the progress in poverty reduction has been 4. One, the agricultural growth has been very robust. Very few developing countries experience robust growth in both agriculture and manufacturing sector. India grew very well when it grew well in the manufacturing sector growth, not so much in agricultural sector growth. But Bangladesh is an exceptional country in that respect that it grew both in manufacturing sector and in agricultural sector. And behind the growth of agriculture is the role of our peasants, but not just peasants, not just unskilled labor, but also technological minded peasants. So this is the Esther Boserov's classic hypothesis of technology adoption under population pressure. And we find this in case of success in Green Revolution in the late 70s, early 80s, it has started, but it grew momentum really in the first half of the 90s. And later we find that it's not just in the adoption of HYV, high yielding variety rice seed, but also in the increasing adoption of agricultural mechanized technology. The agricultural mechanized service market, i.e. power tiller and power thresher, has spread in a very quick pace in Bangladesh. Now more than 90% of the tillage operations are done by the mechanized power tillers. And in recent years, we find, particularly in the decade of 2010s, we find the faster spread of power thresher. Even combined harvester are being used in many areas. In our areas, for instance, last year we have seen a very extensive use of power thresher and combined harvester. So agriculture has been the very prime driver for the progress in rural poverty and national poverty. The second drivers, I'll be very quick on those drivers. Second drivers is very well known and has been discussed by Dr. Mustafizur Rahman, is the growth of manufacturing sector led by export-led ready-made garment sector. And that itself is a big story to tell. How the RMG success has been brought about by learning by doing and learning by seeing. That worked for Bangladesh. It led to the growth of the middle class, broad-based growth of the middle class entrepreneurs, in contrast to the first generation debt default entrepreneurs of the late 70s. This is a new class of entrepreneurs. And related to that, in the recent decade of 2010s, we find not just in the export-led sectors, but also in the domestic economy-oriented manufacturing activities, Bangladeshi entrepreneurs have emerged very well and doing very well. Third factor I should mention, that's the overall flow of foreign remittance. Remittance from the overseas workers, which was less than 5% even in 2004, has almost increased to more than 10% by 2010, and has somewhat reduced in proportional terms to 7-8% in 2016, but maintained a robust growth even during the COVID year. And it is well known how it helped the government to maintain liquidity in the economy. So agriculture, manufacturing sector, and remittance played an important role. The fourth factor, which I would like to single out, which is not always emphasized, is the role of aspiration. So nowadays, the people's aspiration has risen to a even greater level. Although we do not have a very inclusive public transport system like in the Western countries, where middle class and the rich and the poor rub shoulder against each other in the rapid mass transit, but we find that there has been a convergence of aspiration among the poor and the rich classes. So everybody wants to get rich quicker, wants to have a very good life, wants to adopt technologies and make the best use of it, although there is still disparity in online access and internet platform and so on. But nevertheless, the aspiration is to achieve the English medium quality education, send their children abroad. This is not just the aspiration of the middle class anymore. When we did a recent evaluation of Shopno program in Bangladesh, we found out that even the extreme poorest women, their greatest desire to have their children highly educated and get access to the salaried jobs. They no longer look to the agricultural jobs or rural non-farm jobs of low skill variety. Lastly, I will speak about some of the challenges that are persisting in our way forward. First is that although poverty rate is declined, the inequality has increased rather worryingly. So I had one slide which showed the poverty has declined and inequality has increased. That slide I cannot show, unfortunately. So you have to trust on me that Palmer ratio, which is the ratio of the income that is going to the bottom 40% and bottom 10%, it has consistently increased between 91, 92 to 2016. And in fact, Gini index, more familiar, Gini index of inequality, which is a measure of distribution in a society, has increased almost to 0.48, 48% in percentage terms. And economists generally hold that if it exceeds 0.50, 50%, that you are entering into a danger zone of very high and irreversible inequality. So we are almost there, 0.48 according to 2016 HIS. So what can be done about rising inequality? Because that will reduce the pace of poverty reduction. It is already doing so. The pace of poverty reduction between 2005 and 2010 was almost 1.8%, and it has slowed down between 2010 and 2016 to 1.2 and 1.5%. So what is happening here? When you move from low income inequality to high income inequality, your growth elasticity of poverty reduction, which used to be around 2 in the 1990s, has declined to barely 1 in the middle of 2010s. So growth elasticity is declining. You are getting very high growth rate, no doubt, from 4 to 5 to 6 to 7, 8% growth. But your power to reduce poverty, the elasticity, has declined from 2 to 1. So there you are sacrificing a lot. So in fact, if you could protect your initial growth elasticity of poverty reduction, you could manage to reduce poverty even with a lower growth rate. And that is very important consideration in the post-COVID uncertainties that are prevailing in the world, because you will not be probably able to grow as optimistically as you did in the pre-COVID period of 7-8% per year. And that will affect your chances of reaching the SDG 1, all the goals under SDG 1 of zero poverty. So this is the first challenge, how to combat. One traditional solution, time-tested solution in the European context, is to have a redistributive state. That is, you tax more from the rich and the affluent and redistribute the resources through your spending channels for the poorest and the most deprived. However, that channel is not working very well in Bangladesh. If you look at the tax GDP ratio in the early part of 2010s and the later part of 2010s in 2019 fiscal year, you see the tax GDP ratio was 8% in both the years. In fact, it has slightly declined according to the 8-5-year plan document, which I have before me. It has slightly declined, the tax GDP ratio. So first of all, the overall envelope of tax GDP ratio is very, very small, very modest compared to Nepal or India or other Pakistan or other countries. So that has to be improved. The second factor is that we have not tried the other elements or instruments of tax collections like wealth tax. We have not really vigorously applied that tax instrument. So there are rooms for growth of tax revenues, and which will help our spending ability and our redistributive ability. So this is in a short my small take, but there are other possible avenues of impacting on rising inequality through the asset distribution program, such as cash land distribution program to the landless. There are other sources of impact. The second big challenge is that how do you improve what Michael Sandel in his recent book called The Tyranny of Merit. How do you create a society which will not be only based on individual mobility and individual meritocracy as a way of upward mobility? Because we have to grant that fact that not everybody in our society would be privileged enough to graduate from the universities, to access the higher salaried jobs either in the public or private sector. So there will be millions remaining in the unskilled, relatively uneducated sectors. So we have to do much for them. And this is a big challenge in the coming decade. How do you create jobs for those relatively unskilled youth and unskilled labor force would be not that fortunate to pass the graduation mark of tertiary education. But more importantly, those who have entered into the sphere of tertiary education, they experience very differential quality of education. Dhaka versus Kurigram will have a very different quality of education. So how do you have a common minimum good, a common minimum quality good for everybody? And that should begin at the primary and the secondary level. If the basic education quality is good, even if they cannot pursue higher education stream, they would be able to fend for themselves. They would be able to acquire vocational and technical skills that are required for their graduation. So quality education, how to maintain that minimum across regions and so on. So last point I will end by referring to our economic philosophy of Bangabandhu and the constitution. You see, our constitution and Bangabandhu's economic philosophy was in a nutshell can be epitomized by coining the word democratic socialism, where there will be democracy and socialism meaning social justice. And that is reflected in 4 principles, that is reflected in the Article 10, where the social justice or socialism has been amply defined. But that is also reflected in 2 articles which are not frequently discussed, is the Article 19 and Article 20. Article 19 clearly mentions, just after 1 year, the publication of the book, seminal book by John Rawls, a theory of justice, Article 19 mentions about the fair equality of opportunity. So this equality of opportunity is সুযোগের সমতা, এভাবে আনিসুজ্জামান ট্রান্সলেট করেছেন, ডক্টর কামাল হোসেন লিখেছিলেন equality of opportunity. So this is very much there in the Article 19. Second is that in Article 19, sub-article 2 mentions very clearly about the equitable distribution of opportunities and income and wealth. সম্পদের সুষম বন্টন, পরিষ্কারভাবে ইকুয়ালিটি অফ অপরচুনিটিসের পরে ইকুয়ালিটি অফ আউটকামের কথা বলা হচ্ছে। দিস ইজ দ্য ভেরি ইম্পর্টেন্ট পয়েন্ট from a moral justice point of view, that our the Bangabandhu and his Nikot Shawkormira has thought about not just about the equality of opportunity, but also about equality of outcomes. So that is one. And lastly, on the Article 20, that Article 20 clearly mentions that each will work according to his capability and will get remuneration according to the quality and quantity of the labor. This is the classic sort of distribution principle which has been enshrined in many labor and welfareist regimes and social democratic parties, that has been enshrined in our constitution in Article 20. So that is the ethos and the philosophy we have to pursue, even when we think about accelerating growth and even when we think about reaching SDGs. So with these words, I would stop at this point. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Binayak Sen. And ladies and gentlemen, out of many points that he has said, I just like to highlight 2 very important points he made about women education and empowerment and technology adoption. I think those were very instrumental in bringing us where we are today. Dr. Binayak also emphasizes on quality education for all, at least up to secondary level. And also he emphasizes on equality of opportunity and outcome. In retrospection, we also see poverty alleviation probably was an obsession to the father of the nation. Not only in big things, in small things also, he has made efforts. Say in first 5-6 months of his statesmanship, he ordered construction of more than 1.5 lakhs houses for women, for freedom fighters. He has made baby food, fertilizer duty-free. He has significantly reduced cost of cotton so that people at least can wear. He has significantly reduced the tax on water pump so that technology could be adopted, at least mechanical technology could be adopted in the agriculture sector and things like that. Anyway, thank you once again, Dr. Binayakshan. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is Dr. Mahfuz from BIISS. Dr. Mahfuz, you have the floor.
Respected Chair of the session, Ms. General Mohammed Dadul Bari, NDC PACT, Director General of BISS, Honorable Chief Guest, Professor Dr. Gahur Rizvi, Advisor to the Honorable Prime Minister on International Relations Affairs, fellow presenters, ladies and gentlemen. My presentation is on development trajectories and imperatives for Vision 2041. Even though the previous speakers have highlighted some of the aspects of trajectories, I would like to highlight some of the left issues. So before I present, I would pay the deepest respect to the greatest Bengali of all time, the father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and I would like to quote from his valuable addresses. First, to build a golden Bengal, we need a golden people. To solve these problems and to build a happy and prosperous Bangladesh, the people need to work hard and to increase production. And number two quotation is, we'll turn this world-diverse country into a golden one. In the Bengal of future, mothers will smile and the children will play. And we can surely rebuild the country through hard work. And we have to bring smile on poor people's face. The people of Bangladesh have to survive and so require minimum amount of food. So if you see the keywords, he again and again highlighted on hard work and increased production, and bringing a smile to the faces of the mothers and children, and also through hard work. And he also, in fact, had, I would say, his lifetime, in fact, political agenda was to eradicate poverty and bringing, in fact, improvement in the standard of life of the poor people, and also, in fact, food and nutritional security of the mass of the population. So what are the other thoughts of Bangabandhu? As already mentioned by our Director General and also other speakers, so ending poverty and hunger and undernutrition. So, and in fact, he always visualized Bangladesh as a land of prosperity, and he also, in fact, highlighted that Bangladesh can be the Switzerland of the East. So it's not just rhetoric; he meant that, in fact. So, and there are two special dimensions of the East, Switzerland of the East. One would be the connectivity hub. So Bangladesh can be a connectivity hub. So it has all the possibilities, and it can utilize the potential of becoming in fact, tourism hub. So these are the two that I understand from his, in fact, dream. So self-sufficiency in food production and improve living standard of the farming household. So at that time, during early 1970s, so the poverty, in fact, people living on the poverty line was around 80%, and most of them were the, in fact, farming households. And Bangabandhu always tried, in fact, to, in fact, channel the public resources and, in fact, so subsidy and other things. So, and he always tried to, in fact, bring smile on the faces of the farming houses. And ending miserable living standard. So that was the thing, and that was the hard reality of the early 1970s because of the war-ravaged country and lack of, in fact, basic resources and lack of public, in fact, infrastructure because of the war. So it was mostly destroyed. So, and he always, in fact, tried to, and he had the, in fact, emphasis to rebuild the infrastructure and rebuild the houses. And the other thing was the developmental and social inclusion. It's not only, in fact, increase the production, but also development, the overall development, the human development aspect of that, and the social inclusion. So include all the, in fact, sections of the society, irrespective of caste, irrespective of religion, ethnicity, in fact, women and children. So all of them are in the vision and in fact radar of Bangabandhu. And also social justice already mentioned by the other speakers. And the thing is that, I mean, it's agriculture and industrial development, which he wanted to maintain a balance between agriculture and industry. And he primarily highlighted on the agriculture, and he visualized that there should be a strong linkage between the two. And if agriculture is performs well, then it can supply the raw materials for the industry. And the other thing is that he always wanted a lot of job in the industry for the educated mass and the mass population. So, and it was his vision, and it was clearly reflected in the first 5-year plan and in his, in fact, speeches, the addresses to the nation. And he always wanted a labor-intensive kind of industrialization. Now we we see in the fourth industrial revolution, so a lot of jobs are removed. So this Bangabandhu didn't want. So he always wanted that the people get jobs in the industries. And social protection. A lot of social protection program was initiated during the initial years. So it's food support program, cash support program, transport programs, and building the houses of the marginalized groups. So these are now continuing. And as we can see from the recent budget, so under the leadership of the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, and she in fact continues this kind of effort of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. So and development of children. So as we see from his speeches, he wants that the children should play. So it's not only just going to the playground, but it's cultural development, the development of the mind of the future citizens of the country. And now, what about Vision 2041? So the Vision 2041 document, the perspective plan of 2021-2041, so it's clearly mentioned that it in fact carries forward the dreams and vision of Bangabandhu, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. And it has mentioned the growth rate. I mean, it wants to accelerate the growth rate, and Bangabandhu always talked about the increased productivity, increased efficiency of the economy. So, and in fact, the Vision 2041 documents, in fact, sets the target of the growth rate of 9% in fiscal year 2031 and 9.9%. It's about 10% in 2041. And reducing extreme poverty. So there are two targets: extreme poverty to less than 1%, and general poverty by is less than 3%. So that is a clearly mentioned target, and we're heading towards that. Even though COVID-19 has in fact a lot of setbacks, and there are some statistics that, I mean, the poverty might have been increased. So, but still we are in fact coming back under the leadership of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. And in fact, there are basically 2-3 milestones. One is, in fact, to become upper middle income country by 2031 and become a rich country, in fact, industrial developed country by 2041, according to the Vision 2041, and the per capita income over $12,500 US. And poverty will become a thing of the past in Sonar Bangla. It's clearly mentioned in the Vision 2041 document. So in order to achieve all these, in fact, targets of the Vision 2041 and the dreams of Bangabandhu, so there are, in fact, a lot of imperatives. Even though the vision document has clearly mentioned some of the, in fact, overarching challenges, like, I mean, the improving quality of the education. So that is really important, because now, as you see, we have the curriculum, we have the teachers, we have the infrastructure, schools, but it's not like transforming the children into the dream of coding, in fact, and a lot of, in fact, other challenges of, now we have the baseline of digital Bangladesh. It has become a slogan, and people understand that there is a need for it, so we cannot survive. But what would be the way? So that is very important to understand. And so it has to be, in fact, conveyed to the minds of the children, millions of the children. And in fact, high growth is very important, but definitely we have to address the issue of undernutrition. So that is very important challenge for Bangladesh. Now, in fact, about 1/3 of the children are undernourished. So that is a big challenge for Bangladesh, because if the children are undernourished, so their cognitive ability is low. So their lifetime return from the jobs and contribution to the economy would be low. It's lower than expected. So that is a big challenge. And human development is a very important thing, because Bangabandhu had that dream. it's overall development of human beings. So it's not only reducing poverty, but also the improving the standard of life, the education, health, in fact, job security. So these are the 3 dimensions of the human development. So, and Bangabandhu has clearly mentioned, repeatedly mentioned in his speeches, the addresses to the nation and his the first 5-year plan. And inequality is already mentioned. So there are a lot of things. I mean, in addressing inequality. In 2010, we in fact had the kind of impression that there is a Kuznets maximum. So as if we have reached the maximum, but now we see that in haste to 2016. So inequality is increasing. So it would be a big challenge for Bangladesh to tame the inequality and in fact distribute the resources to the poor and the marginalized. And the other thing is that people living in the margin, like the people living in the chores, like riverine and coastal islands, and also houses in the coastal areas, the hill areas. So they need to, in fact, be conveyed to the fruits of development. So that is very important, and also attracting the FDI. So during the first years of after independence, so there's a huge misery, and there was hardly any kind of foreign investment. Now we have the under the leadership of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, so she has established the special economic zones. Now 100 special economic zones. There is huge possibility. So if the entire economy can be transformed, and the pace can be started in growth, in fact, accelerating growth. So we have to invest in the heavy industries and electrical and electronic products and high-tech sectors already in the Bangabandhu, in fact, industrial zone. So the government is trying to, in fact, attract foreign investment and also the domestic investment, but we need to attract more investment in these sectors, like, the heavy industries, electrical and electronics. So that could be the backbone. The pace has already been started, but we have to, in fact, increase the space. And infrastructural development. Now we see the mega projects like Madda Bridge, like Metro Rail and others, and in mega investment in energy sector. So, but there are spillover effects, like what would be the benefit for the poor, the marginalized population from this, and there are evictions and displacements of the poor because of the, in fact, acquisition of the land. So what would be the alternative options? So can we, in fact, transfer the share of this, in fact, infrastructure to the poor, to the people who are affected? So that would be the thing. That would be the thing of concern. Can we think of, in fact, that kind of options? And my final word would be that we have to develop. There are a lot of priorities, but we have to develop the travel and tourism sector. So Bangabandhu has visualized Bangladesh as a, in fact, golden land and beautiful land. So, and there are a lot of potential. In fact, there are a lot of natural resources vis-a-vis the architectural sites. So, in fact, the thought of Bangabandhu can be, in fact, realized through development of the tourism sector, like the developing the country as a kind of, in fact, Switzerland of the East. So these are some of the thoughts from my side. So there are a lot of other areas that can be, in fact, brought into the, in fact, Vision 2041. So thank you very much for your passionate hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mahfuz Kabir. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome our final speaker for today, final panelist for today, Dr. Qazi Kholukujaman Ahmed. Sir, you have the floor. Sir, please unmute. Please unmute your microphone.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director General of BISS, Major General Emdatul Bari. We have our chief guest here, Dr. Gohar Rizvi, the distinguished panelists, and dear participants. At the outset, I'd like to pay my deep respect to Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and pray for his maghfirah. Then I think my task has been made very easy by the previous speakers. My subject is transformation of economic policies and outcomes. In a way, starting from Director General, Mustafiz, Binayak, and Mahfouz, all have talked about policies. Economic policies, social policies, and other policies, but everybody has touched economic policies as well. And also they have discussed the outcomes as well. But the first point I'd like to make that was started by the chairman of the session, and also Binayak elaborated on it a bit. That was Bangabandhu's vision. What was it? I think that's the major theme of the conference. That's the Bangabandhu's vision of Sonar Bangla. Let me give my perspective on it. I see in all of it what Bangabandhu said and did, a human centricity. Because the human being is the most important. You have to focus on the human being's needs. That means as soon as you say human being, the multiplicity of needs of the people come in front of us. Either you talk of a project on education, on health, on this, that, and the other, but you start with the human being, you get everything together. So for the human being to go forward, one needs not only food, but also education, health services, water, electricity, and all the other things that a person needs to live a decent life. And that is also reflected, apart from the constitution that has been mentioned by Binayak, also in the Declaration of Independence. Inequality will be removed. That was said in the Declaration of Independence. Everybody will enjoy human rights, all human rights, and everybody will live a dignified life. So these are the three things that are mentioned very clearly in the Declaration of Independence, and then elaborated in the Constitution, as Binayak has said. So I'm not going into that. The four pillars of our independence and moving forward of human centricity, he has mentioned. So if we want to see that human beings progress, we have to work by involving people. That has to be inclusive. Everybody has to be included in it. Now today, in the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development, 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, we talk of nobody to be excluded. But that was in the ideals of Liberation War, that nobody should be excluded, everybody should be included. And that was the vision of Bangabandhu as I see it. So that kind of a society, there will be one society. Everybody will not be equal. That's not possible. It hasn't happened in the world ever, and it will not happen. But equity has to be ensured. So that's the kind of, wherever one is, whatever level of society one lives in, one may be at a very high-powered chair or much wealth, one may have much wealth, and one may be poor, and maybe doing manual work. But wherever one is, human dignity has to be enjoyed. Now that's the message, I think, of Bangabandhu. If we want to follow him, not just discuss, I think we have to focus on the dignity of every individual. Now on the policy, he tried to promote his ideas through various actions that he took during his short 3.5 years at the helm of the affairs of independent Bangladesh. He focused on, first of all, relief for the returnees from India, and the people whose economies, household economies were destroyed during the War of Liberation. He focused on them. He focused on agriculture. He gave various kinds, I am not going into details, stimulus to restart agriculture. He focused on industry, he nationalized large industries, but he did not want to take away people's right to poverty at a certain level. And therefore, he promoted small and cottage industries. So these are some of the things he started. He focused on infrastructure. Unless infrastructure is right, people can move. Things can be moved from one place to other easily. You don't go very far in terms of improving your economy. So he tried all of these. And towards the end, in 1975, he focused on cooperatives. And that was a revolutionary thing at that time. Nobody's land would be taken away, nobody's property would be taken away, but all will work together. Property owner or landowner will get his or her share. Then the cooperative will get its share and the government will get a share. Now we are talking about, we have heard about the low tax GDP ratio, it's only 9%, while in Nepal it's 17%, and India and other places is much about that, I think. If that cooperative movement was successful, if Bangabandhu had lived on, he was not cut short, I think that problem would not be there. Today in Bangladesh, the rate of becoming rich is highest in the world, and yet our tax GDP ratio is so low. The first policy transformation, first change came after 1975, after the brutal killing of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. From human focus to capital focus and market focus. So that was the first change that started. And in the 1980s, we would see it was a lost decade, as a matter of fact. Only the average growth rate was 3.4 or 3.8, 3.4 to 3.8% GDP growth rate. And the nationalized industries were being denationalized, and private individuals were being promoted with government assistance, as was done in the Pakistan times. But growth rate did not accelerate. Poverty did not go down that much. And foreign aid dependence was total for the development budget. And also part of the revenue budget was in some years financed by the funds created under PL 480. So that was a lost decade in that sense. After 1999, when we came into the 1990s, we continued with that same policy orientation. But towards the second half, in the second half of the 1990s, there was a major change took place in the policy, and that was support for agriculture. Agricultural support was neglected during the 80s and early 90s. We were advised by foreign donors that don't give much importance to agriculture. You can buy food, emphasize industry. That was the advice, and that was followed. But in the second half of 1990s, the Sheikh Hasina government, the first government, they decided to give subsidy to agriculture, substantial subsidy, despite opposition from the World Bank and other international agencies and bilateral donors. That helped us improve the agricultural output, agricultural production. And we were almost self-sufficient by 2000. So that was a major change. But in 2001, there was again a political change, and we had the same neglect of agriculture again started. And then, of course, towards the end, we had 2 years of military supported caretaker government. So that in that context, the policy that remained intact was market economy focus. I'm not opposed to market economy focus, but when it becomes tyrannical, as it is, and Bangabandhu said that this is tyrannical. He said he didn't support it, and he supported socialism. That's what his words. And we see it has become tyrannical around the world and in Bangladesh. Other speakers have talked about the disparity that has been created. So this is necessary, absolutely necessary that will happen. It's happening around the world. There is no reason why it should not happen in Bangladesh if you depend on unfettered market forces. But in Bangladesh, the disparity has increased, but perhaps not as much as it could have, because there are certain policies of the government, this government, starting from 2009, which focused on the poorer segments of the population. For example, the safety net programs, large safety net programs. Then focus on agriculture back again. A lot of support to agriculture, agricultural credit, and other agricultural development support and so on, and subsidies as well. So the poverty declined, but the rate of poverty decline has decreased, as has been mentioned. But I have an explanation for that. The explanation is when poverty was easier to solve, the rate of poverty alleviation was faster. But when it has become very hardcore poverty, I go around the country, I know, I go to the villages, it's not very easy to remove poverty in that context. Because there are these groups of people who have specific problems of their own. You have to address those problems if you want to, for example, the tea garden workers, for example, the people with disabilities, the Howard people, and so on. They have specific problems. You can't have one shoe fit all. And therefore, those policies have to be, first of all, designed and then implemented properly. There is a recognition for that in the policy making circles. But the problem is it's very difficult. It's not easy. And therefore, it has the rate has declined because of valid reasons, not for anybody else's theory or anything, because I see the practical aspects of it. Now we are doing very well, as has been said, in terms of, and everybody recognizes that internationally it is recognized that these policy changes starting from 2009 actually. 2008 manifesto of our election manifesto says the goal is a secular,
Sir, your microphone is off again.
it was stated in that manifesto, and policies were being formulated towards that end. But as I said, the market economy perspectives dampened some of the other social perspectives, and therefore you have the disparity, but it is much less because of the policies to alleviate poverty that were adopted. So we move on, and up until the corona pandemic, we have done tremendously well. We improved our not only economy, per capita income has gone up to about $2,000 from about 560 or something in 2005. then we are a lower middle income country, and we are moving forward to becoming a upper middle income country by 2031. So that's our perspective. But on the other hand, I have to make one comment though about the graduation thing. Its dignity is associated with it. We are at a level we claim, and absolutely truly we claim, that our income has gone up tremendously. Our progress has been phenomenal, and everybody internationally recognizes that. And still we want to remain a LDC up to 2026. We can get out anytime we want to. If we have built Padma Setu, why can't we manage? Only 2 billion is something we lose a year. And that's nothing in the context of our income. The dignity will go up. There will be certain problems, I realize, but we were told that if the quota system were removed, then our government export will collapse. It hasn't. We have risen to the occasion. Therefore, I would think we should not wait that long. I should think that Bangabandhu's centenary, we should get out of LDC dogma and become a country of moving forward, developing, least developed, developing, and developed. This distinction is not very meaningful to me. Low income, middle income, high income, yes, I understand. So let us, I know nobody will listen to me. I know nobody will support my view, but this is my view, and I have been saying it for a long time. Because I go out to the villages on the one hand and to the international arena also on the other side. So both, I see both sides. So I see this LDC thing, how it hurts our ego, and I see in the rural areas how people are moving faster. You don't see people. They have expectation, and they work, and the policy framework that has been created for them, they are working, and that's why you got the agricultural production growth, and also non-agricultural growth in the rural areas. I think that's the basis of the economy. There are others, of course, export is there, digitalization is there, and so many other things. But the main base, the foundation is the rural economy, agriculture and non-agriculture. Non-agriculture is flourishing. And until the corona pandemic, nobody recognized. No, that's not true. Some people did not recognize that agriculture and rural economy was the foundation on which we were building our economy. But now I see many people who never mentioned rural economy. They come back and then say, yes, rural economy has saved us. The agriculture has saved us. So we have to be very, very, very careful and look back to what Bangabandhu did. If we look back, we'll see he emphasized agriculture. He emphasized people. He emphasized, of course, at that time, the whole country was rural, but he emphasized the rural sectors more. Now, if we want to move forward, there are, of course, certain challenges. Some of those have been mentioned, but I give great credit to Awami League. In their election manifesto of 2018, they have recognized all these problems we are talking. It's not new to the policymakers. It's not new to the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, because she knows all of them, and they were recognized in the election manifesto of 2018. I'll give you a few of them. Skills gaps, that has been mentioned, and this is one of the major problems we face. If we want to take forward our economy and society, we need skilled people more and more. Even if we want to earn more remittance, we need skilled people to be sent abroad. So that's the first thing, skills. There is a policy, 2011 skill development policy, that has to be implemented properly so that we can get the skills. But we need also to survey to find out which sector needs what kinds of skills, and what levels of skill at a particular point of time that can be updated later on. So that is necessary, and then our education system should be geared to that end. This is something I think we should do, and that has been recognized because we need skill. It was recognized in 2011, and it was recognized again in 2018. The second thing that was recognized was corruption. That has been recognized there. Zero tolerance, that has been declared. And actions were started on it. Corona pandemic probably had stalled that a bit.
Sir, you're off again.
It is also recognized that there are governance gaps which should be filled up. So you see, it was also recognized the centralization of policy making that has an implementation. So these problems have been recognized by the government. So I think the government deserves credit. So when we talk about the problems, I think we should recognize that the government also recognizes it. And then how that can be overcome, that's the issue. I think these problems are known. Some of the issues that can be overcome one of the issues can be overcome at various levels of society and various levels of economy. Some you have to address at the local level, and therefore you need local governance much more in the sort of policy making, planning, and implementing mode. Others at the macro level, for example, tax GDP ratio, and how to utilize the reserve, foreign exchange reserve that you have. You are not, the economy is not, if the economy does not start moving fast, that will remain there, it will increase, which is good, we feel good. But then that economy will, I am sure, will start soon moving. Because we have done tremendously well. I think it's about maybe a few countries in the world that have done so well during the pandemic. Our growth rate was 4.5% in 20. And I don't, that's the international measurement. Now, I don't know how many countries have achieved that. Very few, I think, achieved that rate of growth this year. We have managed our pandemic very well, and the economy is starting to recover, and then we have to rejuvenate it as early as 13th April. So these are the policy issues. As early as 13th April, after 1 month, just about 1 month, the Prime Minister issued this stimulus package, a huge 3.7% of the GDP. Later, it was raised to 4.3%. Now, the other side of it is, are these policies being implemented properly? So we have to look at that as well. We could have gone much faster, perhaps, if the implementation side of it was as fast as the policy making side of it. So these are the challenges. So we were doing very well, and during the pandemic we have done well, and we should go back soon, I think, to the trajectory that we were on in 2019, so that we move forward towards, first of all, 2031, the 2030 agenda for sustainable development. I'll finish very soon. The agenda was adopted by the United Nations on 25th September 2015. And in 3 weeks' time, 3 or 4 weeks' time, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina appointed a committee in her office to plan how to implement this program, Agenda 2030. And they have been working very well. They have prioritized the targets under 17 goals, 39 of them. And they say 39 plus 1, 39 targets, 1, everybody has to be included. So I think this is a very forward-looking looking policy. So what we need to do is to implement that. And if we go back to Bangabandhu again, if we follow his vision, then we see these are the elements in that vision. Everybody is to be included. So we have the policy framework now within the broad perspective that Bangabandhu had. Now our problem is, as I see, in many cases, not always, in certain cases, is implementation. So we have to give much emphasis on implementation and skill development. And it has been mentioned to skill development in international negotiations so that we can take advantage of the opportunities that are there and minimize the problems that we might face. Now, within the country also, we need skilled people and motivated people. Now is the opportunity this year's the Mujib centenary, and the golden jubilee of our independence, that we commit ourselves to do whatever we can do from the vintage point that we are in, to promote that vision, Bangabandhu's vision, people-centered development, including everybody. And we have a policy framework in 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which is the government we expect that will be implemented by 2030. We will be able to achieve at least the prioritized targets that have been identified, and become a upper middle income country by them, not leaving people behind. See, we can become upper income country, even developed country, by leaving a lot of people behind. So that's something Bangabandhu would not want us to do. And therefore we have to carry everybody with us, meaning everybody has to be legitimately and equitably included in the process. So there are elements of these in the policies I have just tried to outline. Now it's our task, wherever we are, to do our bits to see that we move towards that end, towards the goal of a nation of equals, as human beings, as citizens of a country, and not differentiated on the basis of economic or social position. And I am somebody, but this is the other thing, is the values. We are not we. So we have to move out of I and into we if we want to move forward together, because that is a heritage. That is one of the ideals of liberation war. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Khalikuzaman. Ladies and gentlemen, he reminded us a very fundamental aspect that we are prone to forgetting. Human being was the center of everything Bangabandhu did or he stood for. And our path always went downwards whenever we have shifted our focus from human being to elsewhere, for example, capital, markets, etc. And he also tells us that we started coming back only after we started subsidizing the agriculture sector and strengthening and expanding our safety net. We have come back so strongly that now we can afford to develop some ego. And I agree with him when he says this LDC thing really now hurts ego. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I think we should have an open forum. The platform is open to you. Please raise hand either on the camera or on the program, and please wait for being nominated. I think let us have General Harun. Sir, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, সর্বপ্রথমে সর্বশ্রেষ্ঠ ইতিহাসের সর্বশ্রেষ্ঠ নায়ক, বাংলার অবিসংবাদিত নেতা, আমাদের জাতির জনক বঙ্গবন্ধু শেখ মুজিবুর রহমানের প্রতি বিনম্র শ্রদ্ধা। BISS কেও ধন্যবাদ যে 50 বছর পরে হলেও জাতির জনকের যে ভিশন সেটাকে আমরা বিশ্লেষণ করার সুযোগ পেয়েছি। BISS কে ধন্যবাদ। আজকে যে 4 জন সম্মানিত এবং বিজ্ঞ যারা উপস্থাপন করলেন তাদের প্রতি আমার কৃতজ্ঞতা। তবে আমি দুটো বিষয়ে একটু উপস্থাপন করতে চাই। আমরা যতটুকু অগ্রসর হয়েছি পৃথিবীর ইতিহাসে এটা বিরল, ডক্টর খালিকুজ্জামান এটা বলেছেন, এবং পৃথিবীতে একটা উন্নয়নের রোল মডেল হিসেবে আমরা পরিচিত হয়েছি। সেজন্য অবশ্যই আমরা একটা গর্বিত জাতি বলতে পারি। এবং সেই সাথে ডক্টর খালিকুজ্জামানের সাথে আমি এটাও বলতে চাই 2026 সাল পর্যন্ত অপেক্ষা না করে 2021 সালে বঙ্গবন্ধুর জন্মশতবার্ষিকীতেই আমরা লিস্ট ডেভেলপ থেকে ডেভেলপিং কান্ট্রিতে চলে যেতে চাই, যেই কষ্টই হোক না কেন, যেই মূল্যই হোক না কেন। ওটা বলার পরে আমার এখন যেটা বক্তব্য সেটা হচ্ছে বঙ্গবন্ধুর ভীষণ যেরকম অর্থনৈতিক অগ্রগতি ছিল, তার সাথে আমি বলবো 7ই মার্চের অমোঘ বাণী যেটা, এবারের সংগ্রাম আমাদের মুক্তির সংগ্রাম, এবারের সংগ্রাম আমাদের স্বাধীনতার সংগ্রাম। দ্বিতীয়টা আমরা আগে পেয়েছি, আমাদের স্বাধীনতাটা আমরা আগে পেয়েছি, কিন্তু আমাদের মুক্তির লক্ষ্যে এখনো আমাদের সংগ্রাম অব্যাহত। সেই মুক্তিটা কি? প্রথমতই অবশ্যই অর্থনৈতিক মুক্তি, বাট সেই সাথে আমাদের সামাজিক এবং ধর্মীয় মুক্তিও প্রয়োজন। এখন বঙ্গবন্ধু যে সময় রাষ্ট্র পরিচালনার দায়িত্ব নিয়েছিলেন সেই সময়কার সাথে এখনকার সময় তুলনা করা সম্ভব নয়। সবচেয়ে কঠিনতম সময়ে বঙ্গবন্ধু রাষ্ট্রের দায়িত্বভার নিয়েছিলেন, যখন রাজকোষ ছিল শূন্য, সমস্ত যোগাযোগ ব্যবস্থা বিচ্ছিন্ন, 1 কোটি বাঙালি ভারত থেকে ফেরত আসছে, 3 কোটি বাঙালির বাড়িঘর নেই, লক্ষ লক্ষ যোদ্ধা হতো, মুক্তিযোদ্ধা এবং যোদ্ধা হতো বাংলাদেশি নাগরিকের চিকিৎসা সুব্যবস্থা এবং সমস্ত যে অবকাঠামো ধ্বংসপ্রাপ্ত। সেই সময়ে বঙ্গবন্ধু জাতির দায়িত্ব নিয়েছিলেন এবং একমাত্র আমি মনে করি, এখনো মনে করি, একমাত্র বঙ্গবন্ধুর পক্ষেই সেই সময়ে দায়িত্ব নিয়ে রাষ্ট্র গঠনের কাজে অগ্রসর হওয়া সম্ভব ছিল। এখন বাংলায় বা ইংরেজিতে একটা কথা আছে, ভেরি গুড বিগিনিং ইজ হাফ ডান। আজকে 50 বছর পূর্তিতে আমরা যা পেয়েছি, যা উপভোগ করছি, যা ভবিষ্যতে স্বপ্ন দেখছি, সবকিছুই সেই সময়ের যে ভিত্তি, সেই ভিত্তির উপর নির্ভর করে আজকে আমরা অগ্রসর হচ্ছি। আমি প্রথমেই বলতে চাই, আমাদের মহান সংবিধানে যে প্রথম যে কথাটি আমাদের উল্লেখ ছিল যে 10ই এপ্রিল 1971 সালে বাংলাদেশ সরকার ঘোষিত হওয়ার পরে তাদের যে বাংলাদেশের প্রস্তাবনা, সেখানে কথা ছিল বাংলাদেশের জনগণের জন্য, কথাটা কিন্তু উল্লেখযোগ্য, বাংলাদেশের জনগণের জন্য সাম্য, মানবিক মর্যাদা এবং সামাজিক সুবিচার নিশ্চিতকরণার্থে আমরা সার্বভৌম গণপ্রজাতন্ত্র বাংলাদেশের প্রতিষ্ঠা ঘোষণা করছি। তো কাজে আমার মূল বক্তব্য, মূল লক্ষ্য ওই 3টে জিনিস, সেটা হচ্ছে বাংলাদেশের জনগণের জন্য সাম্য, মর্যাদা এবং সামাজিক সুবিচার নিশ্চিতকরণার্থে। আমার মনে হয় আমাদের অর্থনৈতিক মুক্তির লক্ষ্যে আমরা যে বিষয় সৃষ্টি করেছি, সেই বিষয় দিয়ে আমাদের সামাজিক মর্যাদা সুবিচার নিশ্চিত করা সম্ভব, কিন্তু সেখানে আমাদের বৈপ্লবিক চিন্তাধারা প্রয়োগ করতে হবে। প্রথমত জবাবদিহিতামূলক একটি সরকার বা যে আমরা যেটাকে বলি অ্যাডমিনিস্ট্রেশন, জবাবদিহিতামূলক অ্যাডমিনিস্ট্রেশন আপনাকে সৃষ্টি করতে হবে। বিচার ব্যবস্থাকে সম্পূর্ণরূপে একটি স্বাধীন সার্বভৌম রাষ্ট্রের উপযোগী করে, যাতে জনগণ সহজে বিচার ব্যবস্থায় সুযোগ পেতে পারে, সেই ব্যবস্থা সৃষ্টি করতে হবে। যদি আমি আমার অ্যাডমিনিস্ট্রেশনকে জবাবদিহিতামূলক করতে না পারি, তাহলে আজকে যে কথাটা ডক্টর খালেকুজ্জামান সাহেব বললেন, রাজনৈতিক সদিচ্ছা যেটা আছে সেটা মাঠে রূপান্তরিত হচ্ছে কিনা আমরা তো দেখতে পাচ্ছি। রাজনৈতিক সদিচ্ছায় এক একটা প্রজেক্ট তৈরি হচ্ছে, সেই প্রজেক্ট একবার, দুইবার, তিনবার, চারবার, পাঁচবার, এমনকি 10 বার পর্যন্ত এটাকে রিভাইজ করতে হচ্ছে। তাহলে আমাদের এক্সপার্টরা প্রথম থেকে যখন চিন্তা ভাবনা করে, তাদের চিন্তা ভাবনার সাথে কি রাজনৈতিক চিন্তা ভাবনার মিল নেই? বা রাজনৈতিক চিন্তা ভাবনা যেটা হয় সেটাকে ইমপ্লিমেন্ট করতে গিয়ে তারা কি সেই সুবিধাটা পাচ্ছে না, বা আমাদের সেই যোগ্যতা কি নেই? যাই হোক, আজকে এত দীর্ঘ আলোচনা আমি যেতে পারবো না। আমি শুধু বলতে চাই, আমাদের অর্থনৈতিক উন্নতি অগ্রগতির সাথে আমাদের সংবিধানের যে লক্ষ্য, জনগণের জন্য যে রাষ্ট্র প্রতিষ্ঠা করার কথা চিন্তা করছি, সেই লক্ষ্যে আমাদের জবাবদিহিমূলক অ্যাডমিনিস্ট্রেশন প্রতিষ্ঠা করতে হবে এবং বিচার ব্যবস্থাকে এমন ভাবে পরিবর্তন করতে হবে যাতে প্রত্যেকটি নাগরিক বিচারের সুব্যবস্থা পেতে পারে। বঙ্গবন্ধু 50 বছর আগে যে দর্শন আমাদের দিয়ে গেছেন, সেটার উপর ভিত্তি করে আমরা অগ্রসর হচ্ছি। আমরা আরো অনেক দূর যেতে পারতাম যদি বঙ্গবন্ধুকে অসময়ে না হারাতাম, এবং বঙ্গবন্ধু পরবর্তী সময়ে যে সামরিক শাসকরা গিয়েছিলেন, তারা কিন্তু বঙ্গবন্ধুর আদর্শকে বস্তাবন্দি করে 21 বছর বাংলাদেশকে বন্দি করে রেখেছিলেন। সেখান থেকে 1996 সালে আমরা মুক্ত হয়ে তারপর থেকে আমরা পথ চলা শুরু করেছি। তো তার মধ্যে আমরা যতটুকু এসেছি, অবশ্যই বঙ্গবন্ধু কন্যা শেখ হাসিনাকে আমাদেরকে স্যালিউট দিতেই হবে, কিন্তু সেই সাথে আমাদের অনুরোধ থাকবে, জনমুখী প্রশাসন প্রতিষ্ঠা করুন এবং জনগণের জন্য ন্যায় বিচার প্রতিষ্ঠা সুনিশ্চিত করুন। বিআইএসএস কে আবারও ধন্যবাদ।
Thank you, sir. Ambassador Shamsher Mubin Chaudhary.
Thank you, Chair. As we meet today, 14th of March, it is 3 days prior to the 101st anniversary of the birth of the great man, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. So I think it is very timely that the BISS has organized this very important discussion. অভিজ্ঞ ব্যক্তিরা অনেক বক্তব্য রেখেছেন, মূল্যবান বক্তব্য রেখেছেন। আমি তার উপরে বেশি আর অতিরিক্ত কিছু বলতে চাই না। আমার শুধু দুটো জিনিস, যে বঙ্গবন্ধুর দর্শনের কথা যখন আমরা বলি, যে দর্শন নিয়ে উনি 1970 নির্বাচনের পরে 6 দফা বলেন, তারপরে বাংলাদেশের মুক্তি সংগ্রামের অবিশ্রাম্বিত নেতা হিসাবে উনি দাঁড়িয়েছিলেন, সেটা ছিল যে বাংলাদেশ একটা দরিদ্রমুক্ত বাংলাদেশ হবে এবং এটা ইনক্লুসিভ ডেভেলপমেন্ট, যাতে যেটা ডক্টর খালেকুজ্জামান বলেছেন, বিনয় সেনও বলেছেন, যে সকলকে নিয়ে আমরা উন্নয়নের দিকে অগ্রসর হতে চাই। এই উন্নয়ন শুধু অর্থনৈতিক বা সামাজিক উন্নয়ন নয়, যেটা হারুন জি কথা বললেন, যে সুবিচার যেন সকল বাংলাদেশের জনগণ পেতে পারে। তো সেই যে দরিদ্রমুক্ত বাংলাদেশের লক্ষ্য যেটা বঙ্গবন্ধুর ছিল, সেখানে আমি একটু ইতিহাসের দিকে যাই। 1985 সালে আমি যখন কানাডায় বাংলাদেশ দূতাবাসে পোস্টেড ছিলাম, তখন গ্লোব অ্যান্ড মেইল, কানাডার সবচেয়ে বৃহত্তম ইংরেজি দৈনিক পত্রিকা, সেখানে একটা আর্টিকেল, একটা এডিটোরিয়াল আমি লিখিয়েছিলাম নর্থ সাউথ ইনস্টিটিউটের সাহায্যে, এইড ইজ নট এনাফ, অর্থাৎ এইড দিয়ে বাংলাদেশকে উন্নয়ন করা যাবে না, এইডের পরিবর্তে আমাদের ট্রেডের দিকে যেতে হবে। বাণিজ্য যদি আমরা বিকাশ ঘটাতে পারি, তাহলে এইড আর প্রয়োজন হবে না। এবং সেটাই আমি বলবো যে গত 30-40 বছরে বাংলাদেশ সেদিকে এসছে। আজকালকে ডোনার কান্ট্রিজ কথাটা শোনা যায় না, এখন বলা হয় ডেভেলপমেন্ট পার্টনার্স। সেটা আমাদের জন্য একটা বিশাল অর্জন এবং বঙ্গবন্ধুর স্বপ্নের দিকে এক ধাপ আমরা বড়ভাবে এগিয়ে গেছি। এখন ডেভেলপমেন্ট পার্টনার, যেখানে অর্থনীতিবিদ অনেকেই বসে আছে, ডেভেলপমেন্ট পার্টনার্স এর এখন মানে সংজ্ঞাটা কি হতে পারে বর্তমান প্রেক্ষিতে? আমরা আগে যারা আমাদেরকে প্রকল্পতে উন্নয়ন স্বার্থ দেন, তারাই শুধু ডেভেলপমেন্ট পার্টনার। আমি মনে করি রেমিটেন্স যেহেতু বাংলাদেশের অর্থনীতি উন্নয়ন এবং অর্থ সামাজিক উন্নয়ন ক্ষেত্রে একটা বিরাট ভূমিকা রাখে, যেসব দেশ থেকে আমরা রেমিটেন্স পাই, বিশেষ করে মধ্যপ্রাচ্য বলেন, ইটালি বলেন, মালয়েশিয়া বলেন, সিঙ্গাপুর বলেন, কোরিয়া বলেন, এরাও কিন্তু এখন আমাদের এই ডেভেলপমেন্ট পার্টনার হিসাবে এদিকে শনাক্ত করার সময় এসছে। কারণ এই রেমিটেন্সটা আমাদের অর্থ সামাজিক উন্নয়নের ক্ষেত্রে একটা বিশাল একটা ভূমিকা রাখে। সর্বশেষে আমি যে কথাটা বলতে চাই, যে ডক্টর খলিকুজ্জামান বললেন যে আমাদের এই যে ডিউরেশন আমরা ডেভেলপিং কান্ট্রি হতে যাচ্ছি, এটা 2026 পর্যন্ত অপেক্ষা করতে হবে কেন? এটা বিশেষজ্ঞরা বলবেন, যারা এটা নিয়ে আলাপ আলোচনা করছেন, যে এটা আরো এগোনো যায় কিনা, তারিখটা আরো এগোনো যায় কিনা, আমি সেই বিষয়ে আমি কোনো মন্তব্য করতে চাই না। তবে সেই দিকে যদি আমরা অগ্রসর হতে চাই, আমি মনে করি এই ডিউটি ফ্রি কোটা ফ্রি এটা কিন্তু অনেকটা এনসিসির মতো, আপনাকে ঘুম পাড়িয়ে দেয় যে আমি কোটা ফ্রি পাচ্ছি, ডিউটি ফ্রি পাচ্ছি, আমাকে নতুনত্ব কিছু করতে হবে না। ডেভেলপিং কান্ট্রিতে প্রজেক্ট আমরা যদি যখন আমরা ডেভেলপিং পার্টনার হিসাবে যাব, ডেভেলপিং কান্ট্রি হিসাবে যাব, সেখানে আমি মনে করি এই প্রেফারেন্স প্রোগ্রাম, যেটা ডিউটি ফ্রি কোটা ফ্রি, এসব থেকে বেরিয়ে এসে ফ্রি ট্রেড এগ্রিমেন্টের দিকে আমাদের প্রতি এগোতে হবে। ডেভেলপিং কান্ট্রির কিন্তু একটা উপাদান হচ্ছে যে কতটা ফ্রি ট্রেড এগ্রিমেন্ট আছে। আমি ভিয়েতনামে 4 বছর অ্যাম্বাসেডর ছিলাম। ভিয়েতনাম কিন্তু প্রেফারেন্স কোনো ধরনের শুল্কমুক্ত সুবিধা তারা পায় না, কিন্তু তাদের দুনিয়ার সকল বড় বড় দেশের সাথে, পৃথিবীর সকল বড় দেশের সাথে ফ্রি ট্রেড এগ্রিমেন্ট আছে। আমরা সেই ফ্রি ট্রেড করার জন্য আমাদের সেই দক্ষতা, মনোবল এবং সেই লোকবল আছে কিনা, না থাকলে সেদিকে আমাদের প্রস্তুত হওয়া প্রয়োজন। যদি আপনি ডেভেলপিং কান্ট্রি হতে চান, আপনাকে ফ্রি ট্রেডের দিকে এগোবেন, কারণ ফ্রি ট্রেড হতে গেলে দেখা যায় আমি ট্যারিফ লস করে ফেলবো। তো ট্যারিফ লসের পরিবর্তে যেটা হবে, বিদেশি বিনিয়োগ কিন্তু অনেক বাড়বে। বিদেশি বিনিয়োগ বাড়লে কিন্তু কর্মসংস্থানও বাড়বে। তো আপনি ট্যারিফে যেটা আপনার লস করবেন, কথিত লস করবেন, তার চেয়ে অনেক বড়ভাবে লাভবান হবে আপনি বিদেশি বিনিয়োগ এবং সেই কর্মসংস্থান থেকে। আমি বিআইএসএস কে আবারও ধন্যবাদ জানাতে চাই। আজকের এই অনুষ্ঠান খুব সময় উপযোগী, অত্যন্ত গুরুত্বপূর্ণ। আগামীতে অবশ্যই আবার কথা হবে। ধন্যবাদ সকলকে।
থ্যাংক ইউ স্যার। মিস তহিদা ফারুকি। Please unmute your mic. You're not audible, ma'am. Your microphone is muted. Ma'am, we'll come back to you. Meantime, get a technical assistance to unmute your microphone. Let us give the floor to Ambassador Shahid Akhtar. Did you request, sir? Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir. These are participating very important. Yes, okay.
See you up there, sir. Shall we move on and come back later?
Please do.
Yeah, I think let's hear from Professor Dr. Syed Anwar Hussain. We'll come back to you, sir. Dr. Anwar Hussain. Sir, please unmute your mic. You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you very much indeed, distinguished chair. Let me begin by paying my homage to our father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. I would also like to thank profusely the distinguished panelists for enlightening us on economic aspect of Bangabandhu's vision of Sonar Bangla. Distinguished chair, I am not an economist, but I would like to add something like a generalized perspective to the discussion. I am being disturbed. Distinguished chair, may I go ahead?
Yes, sir. Now it's okay. Miss Tawhid, we'll come back to you later.
Oh, thank you. Barnier, a 16th century French traveler to Bengal, had it to say, Bengal has 1,000 gates to enter, but not a single for exit. The early 16th century Chinese ambassadors to the court of Bengal's Sultan Ghiyasuddin Azam Shah gave 2 certificates to the people of Bengal. They do not lie, they do not cheat anyone. The first evidence related to how much the foreign visitor was enamored of the natural beauty of the country, while the second one was about the high moral standard of the people. Both the evidences point to a satisfactory state of Bengal and its people. Nevertheless, ladies and gentlemen, superficial observers as they were, historical evidence has it that Bengal was never what is passed off as a golden Bengal. There were riches juxtaposed by rags. There was inequality between the well-to-do and those who found it difficult to eke out a living. The vision of Golden Bengal was first conjured up by the Nobel laureate poet Rabindranath Tagore and then Bangabandhu. Rabindranath's was a poetic imagination, but Bangabandhu's was a realistic and task-oriented. On 10 January 1972, in his homecoming address, while detailing a roadmap for the new country, he uttered a loaded sentence. I quote him, Bangladesh will be an ideal state, unquote. It would be well nigh impossible to define an ideal state, and no country of the world approaches the definition of the ideal state. It may be suggested that Bangabandhu meant to achieve a welfare state, a Sonar Bangla. He articulated the contours of his vision of Bangladesh as he spoke at Rajshahi on 9th May 1972. To me, this speech is very important in capturing the basic elements of what he envisaged as Sonar Bangla. I have myself translated his Bangla speech. What do I want? I want the Bengal people get 2 square meals a day. What do I want? I want unemployed get jobs. What do I want? I want my people of Bengal be happy. What do I want? I want my Bengal people be smiling and be sportive all the time. What do I want? I want my people of Bengal smile again to their heart's content. Unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe this was Bangabandhu's roadmap for Sonar Bangla. At 50, Bangladesh may take pride in having taken sure and rapid strides in economic growth, so much so that the country is certified to be graduating from the least developed country status to one of the developing. But there remains a lot more to be done. Economy progresses, but politics lags. I say it again, economy progresses, but politics lags. Economically, we are developing. Politically, we are being underdeveloped with every passing day. Democracy, the earliest commitment of Bangladesh, has had something like a stunted growth over the years. Moreover, Bangabandhu's vision of golden humans for golden Bengal is yet to be had. Economic strides are interspersed with ideological slips, and there has been yawning inequality over the years. We have, ladies and gentlemen, miles to go to reach the vision of Sonar Bangla in a comprehensive way. Thank you, distinguished chair, ladies and gentlemen, for giving me time.
Thank you, Dr. Syed Anwar Hossain. Ms. Tawhida Farooqi, you want to try? Ms. Tawhida Farooqi. Please unmute.
Assalamu alaikum. Having all the regards to the father of the nation who has given us an independent country, and many thanks to the BIS for giving me the floor. And I have come through, I've gone through everything. I have seen all the discussion of all the interpreter. So the thing is that the main thing is that the vision. Our Bangabandhu has got a vision. He has a dream, but he did not. Through this dream, he has given us an independent country. That is the first thing. The other thing is that he's got a lot of vision, but he did not get the proper time. He has given the attention to the many sectors, but he could not fulfill because he did not get time. And by this time, the power has been changed many times. His daughter, our Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, he's fulfilling this. The dream was our Bangabandhu, the eradication of illiteracy, elimination of the poverty, minimization of the inequality of opportunities, empowerment of people, especially the women. I want to say the women education, because if we want to empower the women, we need that education, general education and the technical education. I was the project director of in the education of the stipend project, FSSP, and there our Honorable Prime Minister has given free out of graduation of the women education, and manage a lot of technical education also, and the skill developed. And this development of the women skill, they contributed to our country a lot of contribution they have got in our economic sector, because the export, the women, they become educated, they become technically educated, they got the general education, they are empowered, so they are giving the services properly with their capability, and our education sector through the garments, that they are contributing a lot to a country. That is also some fulfillment of our of the vision of our great father of the nation, and the eradication of the illiteracy. Education also, illiteracy has been eradicated a lot, and minimization of inequality of the opportunity. That is the thing. There is a disparity, as Mr. Speaker Khaliquzzaman said, there is a disparity, but it could have more because of the policies, because of the good policies. We are in a very good shape, but it will be fulfilled sometime. So I will not take too much time. There's everything according to the Mr. Khaliquzzaman. So it could be, instead of it should be we. Then the dream of our Bangabandhu, the father of nation, will be fulfilled. We are in the process. There are many sectors fulfilled, and the other sectors we are in the process. And if we are in this way, the dream will be fulfilled. And by this, the 230 program will achieve a lot. Thank you so much for giving me the floor.
Thank you, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, we are actually running well beyond our schedule. If our honorable chief guest allows, we can have last 3 interventions, starting with Ambassador Shahid Akhtar, then Mr. M.S. Siddiqui, and finally, Dr. Atikul Islam, in that order. Ambassador Shahid Akhtar, please, you have the floor.
Okay. Yes, it has been unmuted. Thank you, sir. Well, I had some difficulty to unmute myself. Now I'm sure you can hear me. Well, I think I will not repeat because most of the preceding speakers have touched on a number of issues. I will just be very brief by mentioning that the vision of Bangabandhu, the 50 years, is a very brief period for us to look into it, because a nation has hundreds of years ahead to further go ahead in different areas. But in this particular period, I think Bangladesh has excelled. Starting from the basket case, today we are recognized as a developing country. And in the threshold of moving out of the LDC bracket, LDC involvement of Bangladesh was very timely at a juncture when I think the preceding speakers mentioned that there were a lot of difficulties all around. And to acquire some benefit, it was necessary for Bangladesh to step into this LDC bracket. And it is also a good decision of the government of Bangladesh today, under the leadership of Sheikh Hasina, that we will soon be moving out of this LDC bracket. And there will be a lot of challenges ahead. And these challenges have to be dealt by our own people. And we should not be very complacent to say that everything is achievable. But I think we need to do a lot of homework. Some of the speakers mentioned that whatever negotiations we have ahead, we need to prepare ourselves. We still have good number of years, 5 to 6 years in our hand. It's a good time to prepare ourselves, and things can go on changing. None of us were looking that this COVID will take us a little bit step backward. But I think Bangladesh during this COVID time has also excelled. And I think, again, the credit goes to the government for taking good care in all the sectors, including the health sector. If the health is not there, what is the use of putting all the development programs? So I think health is a very vital area, and that has been very well taken care of. I think one recognition I would like to give over here, at a very right time, Bangabandhu took a decision that Bangladesh has to become members of the international bodies, which includes all the international organizations, including the member of the United Nations, where he himself visited and made a very, very important statement to all the world leaders. And from there onward, Bangladesh was recognized. And today we are following the footsteps of the father of the nation. And I think that has given us a big leap ahead than many other countries. Well, I'll end over here because you see most of the subject I don't want to repeat because the preceding speakers have already discussed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. M.S. Siddiqui, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are discussing about the past glory and success of the nation and the governments, but we should discuss about the way forward, particularly after graduation, what will be our status, because we are a trading nation now. Our economy is dependent on from 8 to 10. It was discussed by Professor Mustafa here. So Shamsul Mobin Chaudhary has referred to the success story of Vietnam, and also the success behind the success story is the free trade agreement. And we are not much discussing about the free trade agreement. Rather, we discuss about the negative aspect of free trade agreement. And Mr. Shamsuddin Chaudhary also said that we will lose our revenue due to free trade agreement, which is not correct as per statistics of our National Board of Revenue. Bangladesh is reducing the tax tariff since 1990 gradually. And if you see the statistics of National Board of Revenue, you see that the revenue also continuously rising. So when we are reducing the tax rate, total revenue collection is rising. So our experience say a different story. So we can comfortably go ahead because there is no question of research or discussion, good or bad. We have no choice to face our competitors. We must have free trade agreement as early as possible, particularly when we are going to be graduated by 2026. Please take note of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. From Dr. Atikul Islam. So please have a voice. No, you're still muted. You're still mute, sir.
Just one sec. Yep, I think I'm there finally. Thank you for giving me a chance to say certain things. I won't be too long. I'm least qualified to talk about the Bangabandhu's vision for Sonar Bangla at 50. I've heard from highly knowledgeable people and I learned a lot. Let me make a comment on a small thing. As someone involved with the higher education of this country, I hear lots of people lament that everyone does not get a chance to go to university. I don't think anywhere in the world everyone goes to university. I don't think everyone needs to go to the university, a university, and I don't believe that everyone wants to go to university either. Okay, now the question also comes about skills. On skills, my take is this: Bangladesh has so many educated people. Why don't you have skilled people? Why do you have to import people from the neighboring countries and from faraway countries, and billions of dollars go out of the country? People remit outside. Now, I believe that this problem can be solved. First of all, we have the quantities in primary and secondary education. In tertiary education, you cannot accommodate them all. So what do? You send them towards vocational education. You send them towards technical education. You kill two birds with one stone. These people make tremendous contributions to the economy. They do not remain poor anymore. Let me take the case of the orphanages in this country, the madrasas in this country. Have a look at the growth of madrasas over the 20 years and the growth of technical education. Why is technical education so far behind? And why is madrasa education spreading like that? We can do something. We can increase our education budget by only 2% of the GDP. And then give incentives to the madrasa people, to these orphanage kids, to learn some technical skills so that they don't have to live on other people. So why not we do something like that, that makes people enlightened, more worldly in a way, productivity goes up, technical skill develops in the country, all the sectors of the economy gets the benefit. We don't have to have everyone in the higher education, and we lift people out of poverty. A plumber in a developing country earns more than a professor, earns more than a secretary. So if we have electricians, if we have more plumbers, if we have more rod benders, if we have people like that, if we have lots more technical, medical technicians, if we'll have a lot more agricultural technicians, imagine what kind of return on investment you can get. So that is my small point. Thank you for letting me this point. It's not philosophical. It's a very down-to-earth sort of a thing. I leave the most philosophical issues to more enlightened and experienced people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, I sincerely wish that we could have continued this discussion, which is really rich in content with the participation and wisdom of so many distinguished participants. But we have to close, and I think without further ado, let us welcome Professor Dr. Gohar Rizvi, today's honorable chief guest. Is the advisor to the Honorable Prime Minister on International Relations Affairs, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Rizvi.
Thank you very much, General Imdad, for giving me this opportunity, for asking me to be at this seminar. Let me begin by very sincerely thanking you for the choice of your theme for discussion today, Bangabandhu's vision of Sonar Bangla. But before I make my comments, let me also thank a number of speakers this morning. I had the privilege of hearing Vinayak Shen and Dr. QK Ahmed last week. It was a treat then, and it was a treat this morning again to hear them. Dr. Mustafizur Rahman, as always, sparkled, was sharp, penetrating, and gave us great hope. Dr. Mahfouz's presentation gave us a list of extraordinarily comprehensive list of areas in which we have done well and where we need to focus. So thank you to all. And it is also a pleasure to see a number of friends whom we have been deprived during pandemic of seeing on this through this meeting. As you said, General Imdad, we are way behind schedule. So I am going to be as brief as I humanly can. Let me say very, very clearly, Bangabandhu's vision was very, very clearly defined, articulated, stated, and recorded in the 4 principles enunciated in the Constitution. They were as comprehensive as can be. These were not theoretical aspirations. These were based on his experience of 23 years of dealing with Pakistan and Pakistani policies. The constitution that was given to us in 1972, drafted by Dr. Kamal Hussain, Barrister Amirul Islam, and others. But that constitution really is a product of his mind, of his experience, and of his aspirations for Bangladesh. And that is why I'm really, really very grateful that Vinayak today took us into some of the aspects of the Constitution and spelled out that visionary aspect of his dream of making a socially just society in Bangladesh. So while we know where his vision, what his visions were, and today each of the speaker has in different ways added to that, we also know 50 years later, today Bangladesh has come a long, long way. We have, in fact, what we have witnessed in the last 10, 12 years, people in 2008-9 would have found it very difficult to imagine that in such a short period of time, such extraordinary progress could have been made. It is true, we have some problems. There will be no denying that those need to be addressed, and there is a lot more to accomplish. Yeah. But there are also areas where gives some anxiety. One of the fundamental commitments of Bangabandhu, his dream, his vision, was creating a secular society. I fear many of us will agree, not disagree with me at least, that in that area, there has been a regression. It is true, our constitution has been amended, and much of the secular spirit of the Constitution of 1972 has been reincorporated. But as one looks around, one sees that we need to be aware, we need to be awake that our society has not been that, has become that secular, plural, liberal democracy that he had imagined. Even today, inequalities between communities, between groups, intolerance prevails. That was not what Bangabandhu had imagined. We need to reflect on it. We need to, yes, we are celebrating, we will celebrate. There is much, much, much to celebrate. But if we do not take into account where there have been regression, we will be. The other area is, and I think QK Ahmed Bhai and others have made it very, very clear that on our economic performance, we have done extraordinarily well, even though there's always room to do much more. But does this economic progress really fit the vision of Bangabandhu, of a socially just, egalitarian society? Is his vision of a socialist economy with limited market, free market participation? I think not. Today, we have shifted. I'm not arguing, not suggesting that it is entirely wrong, but it has not been in keeping with his vision. And if we revert to his vision, we will need to focus on these issues. One thing that was missing, except I think in passing mentioned by Dr. QK Ahmed, was 1972 Constitution described Bangabandhu's vision, gave us those fundamental principles in the Constitution to give us a roadmap. But his first 3 years were taken up literally firefighting. As the chairman yourself pointed out, all the difficulties he had to face and all the things that he had to do to recreate from a war-torn society into a new state. Everything that needed to be brick by brick, he had to build it. He had to rehabilitate the refugees, restore agriculture, transport infrastructure. Where not? Together with building up institutions, laws, governments, and policies. So but it was in 1975 that finally Bangabandhu had provided us with the mechanism, the framework, the structure through which to realize his dream. And that was unfortunately got discredited even before it was given a try. He was killed before he could implement his ideas of what is today popularly known as Bakshal. Dr. QK Ahmed was absolutely right that his vision focused on creating a society based on cooperatives. A society with a decentralized government. A society where property would be respected, but the benefits of the property and the wealth would be shared by all. The scheme that was provided in 1975 was a detailed programmatic framework for how to restructure the society. Unfortunately, Bakshal got popularly condemned as a one-party system, which is far from truth. We never analyzed it. We never looked into it carefully. And had we adhered to, or had Bangabandhu been given even another 5 years to implement that scheme of his that he had announced in 1975 of devolution of power, creating 67 or 64 districts with elected governors, moving decision-making to the grassroots, bringing justice and policy making at the grassroots, would have transformed Bangladesh. We would have made no less progress than we have made, but we have made it in a way that was socially just and egalitarian society with the values of social justice and secularism. So I suggest, while maybe the time has moved forward, but the ideas in that 1975 reforms are still very much the need of the time, and we should look at it. We should carefully, critically analyze the contents of his 1975 reform program, and at least bring some of them back so that the dimensions of social justice, equitable society, egalitarian society, a secular society, which has still evaded us, may once again be brought back. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't elaborate. I hope we will have another day an opportunity to discuss his concrete plan for his society, because we all know his vision as explained in the Constitution, but the concrete mechanism for implementing that scheme was in the 1975 reforms. We need to go back, we need to look at them and see how appropriate they are and what part of that plan could be revived. With those words, let me say thank you again. Thank you to all for a wonderful, delightful, highly educative seminar. Thank you. Joy Bangla, Joy Bangabandhu.
Thank you very much, sir, for your very insightful speech. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll agree with me, it was never easy to organize a newly born state. History says it was never easy. Today's corporate world loves to use a very interesting term, crystal gazing. But I'm sure in those formative years, the chaotic situation with scarce resources, it was not possible for everyone to see beyond the horizon. Only few could, and Bangabandhu was one of them. We get this proof at least in two ways. At the age of 50, whatever we see today, whatever development we see today, we can directly trace back to the initiatives instituted by Bangabandhu in his brief period of time. And whenever we have drifted off from his directives, we have got into some potholes. So these are also manifestation. But in the process, I think as a nation, we have developed some skill and habit of getting back into track, which we call resilience. And now we are confident that even if the future is not a mere extension of past, we will be able to cope with the right kind of leadership, which is assertive and which keeps people on the focus of all their activities. With that, I would like to conclude this session by extending our heartfelt gratitude to our honorable chief guest today for remaining here almost all the time, despite his busy schedule, and although we ran behind the schedule. Thank you very much, sir. And we'd like to thank our learned participants today for sharing their wisdom. And then also, equally, we want to express gratitude to all the participants for being here and enriching our session and honoring BIISS. Hope Bangladesh will keep prospering and the Golden Bengal will really become a truly sense Sonar Bangla. Thank you very much. Long live Bangladesh.